We're now at the second line in the 37 practices of Bodhisattva, and it says Nyingi chotla ducha chutaryo jayi chotla jedam metawar na langdor jepe timu munachen payo pong wa Gyalse laglenyin. And this means passion towards friends churns like water. Hatred towards enemies burns like fire. Through the darkness of ignorance, one forgets what to adopt and what to reject. To abandon one's homeland is the practice of a bodhisattva. Now, this is very, very difficult for Westerners to understand. The Buddha said that whoever gives up the householder's way of life completes half the Dharma. And this touches on our attachment to things, to locations, to people, and so on. And, obviously living in America, if Shakyamuni Buddha, as Prince Siddhartha sat underneath a maple tree here in the Midwest and closed his eyes and started to go into a meditation, it would be long before he heard a shotgun, "Get off my property!" So it's a good thing that he achieved enlightenment in India when he did. So it's, the idea of attachment to things and to youth and to net worth and to status is so embedded in our culture here in the West. And that attachment is the problem. The problem isn't, when you look at the 12 links of dependent origination, when you get to the link of contact and feeling, when you taste good food and it feels, it's delicious, that's neither virtuous nor non-virtuous. It's the attachment to wanting more of that, or being repulsed by something that's the opposite of that. And what energies we apply to getting it, or getting ourselves away from it, that's the problem. And so, here when he's saying that, our friends were churning these friendships and wanting these friendships with, so much passion, and we're wanting, we have this hatred towards our enemies, like a burning fire within us. These two things, this bias, this attachment, is what he's addressing here in this practice. So it's difficult for us to look at an enemy with the same kind of love and compassion that we would have towards our own mother. But what the Bodhisattva practice is to see all beings equally. To see all beings, no difference between, for the most holy mind, there is no difference between a mosquito and your own mother. And now that's a very difficult concept for us to wrap our minds around, because clearly, we're not going to, if we swat and kill a mosquito, we're not going to do the same thing to our mom. And, we're not going to jump in front of a semi to defend a mosquito like we would our mother. But here, developing the kind of love and compassion that radiates in every direction for all creatures would be tantamount to being the heart of God, if I can say that poetically. To recognize that everything that has consciousness, every creature, every human, every bird, every worm, and so on, they all are equal in the eyes of ultimate consciousness. So it's really difficult. So here, Shantideva, a quote that I absolutely adore, Shantideva says that when the messengers of death arrive, what good are friends and what good is family? Only my own merit will suffice, and I have not applied myself. And here, this is pointing at, no matter what your status is, no matter how much your net worth is, no matter how many friends you have or how big you have made your family, when death comes, it's the great equalizer. We are all the same at that moment. There is no better or worse. And the only thing that will help us as we cross that precipice is Dharma. Geshe-la told me one time this Tibetan proverb that says, Capitandi, Sanchiten, Shiwa, Shiwadandi, Chiten. The saying is, when it's time to shit, then you remember the toilet. And so when it's time to die, then you remember Dharma. So I'm not sure if, we should be applying, thinking about and remembering the toilet all day long when we don't have to go to the bathroom. But the point is, it's only then at that moment that you think, oh, I should apply myself. And Shantideva said there at the end of that quote that when the messengers of death arrive, what good are friends, what good is family, only my merit will suffice. And I have not applied myself. So, Master Shantideva is, this exalted great being from, the Nalanda years. Of course, they didn't think that at the time. That's why he supposedly spoke the Guide to the Bodhisattva Way of Life. If he's saying that he hasn't applied himself, then, who are we? Who are we? Especially, as Westerners who are just, we're part of that first generation, that first transmission into the West. And it's a wonderful time to experience it, but it's also not, because we're having to, I feel like sometimes all the study that we have to do and all the things that we have to do to make sure that this is in place so that it can last here in America, for example, we're disadvantaged for our own practice as fully as the Tibetans had. But it's still, this is a lovely time because we are absolutely freeing ourselves of a worldview. Our culture, those of us who've seen through it, are breaking from it and moving towards Dharma and looking at what Dharma says about our reality. So it's when we're working on these vows that we've taken as a bodhisattva to help all beings become enlightened, we're working on our own enlightenment first so that we can help others. Then, certainly we have to look at the what these masters have achieved, recreate the conditions exactly as they have specified, and we should get the same results. So can you imagine what it would be, what your heart would be like, what your experience of reality would be like if every single creature that you saw, not that you looked at them like you would your mother, or like you would your best friend, or your lover, or so on and so forth, but if they brought about from your perception of them that same feeling. If every single creature you saw, every single person you came into contact with, had with them that same brilliance that opens your own heart and your mind, and your want for them to be freed, your want for them to have all happiness and joy. Can you imagine what the world would be like? Can you imagine if everyone who ever thought that person is my enemy was suddenly brought to tears thinking about, when will I see you again? When will we meet again? And so that's where I can see that this is a practice of a bodhisattva. That often we sit down and we think, I've got to do this, and I've got to do this, and I've got to do this, because it says so in these different texts and in these different practices and so on, rather than, you're working at the causes, you're working at it. I'm trying to see my enemy like I would my mother. I'm trying to see, this mosquito like I would my own mother. But now, if you think about what you would feel, how it would feel if your perception of that being brought about that same feeling. When I look at a picture of my mother, I've got a picture, 3 beautiful pictures of my mother in my room. And every day I look at them and I feel the loss of her in my life because she passed away in 2007. But there is the thought that, can I ever reach a state where every single being that I ever meet can make my heart do that the instant I look at them, like at the instant I look at the picture of my mother? And that's a practice of a Bodhisattva. That's something that we should really try to adopt, and we should try to give up holding on to these negative attitudes we have towards other people just because they didn't bring us the kind of joy that one over there brought us. That's selfishness. We should look at them as the beautiful, perfect being that they are in the eyes of highest consciousness.